And then also in the second hour, and I am looking forward to this perhaps more than anything today, not to disparage anybody else on the show, but Ed Golden joins us for the first time on the show today. Ed Golden, for those who are sports bettors and have been immersed in sports betting for many, many years, he is the founder of Right Angle Sports, legitimately one of the only people on earth that will move a line dramatically upon release of a pick. And we're talking about his college basketball picks. He has done so for decades, ever since he started Right Angle Sports in 1996. But he'll give us an example of one of those that he did today. And we'll talk about all things with him, all things sports betting, what it has been like to sell picks for all the years, how he has been able to overcome the bad reputation of pick sellers, what he thinks about so many things in the betting industry, and we'll get his thoughts on this year's tournament as well, conference tournaments as well in college basketball. So very much looking forward to that.
The numbers told the story, they always do.
This is A Numbers Game with Gil Alexander on VSiN.
It's one of those idiots who believe in analytics.
Hour number 2 of A Numbers Game at VSiN, the Sports Betting Network, VSiN.com, the VSiN app, Fubo, Sling, Game Plus, iHeartRadio, YouTube TV. Still to come this hour, Lon Kruger to join us. Former college basketball coach who made 17 NCAA tournaments, stretched across 5 different teams. Only one of three coaches to accomplish that feat, along with Rick Pitino, Tubby Smith. We'll get his thoughts on this year's NCAA tournament, what he feels makes up a great basketball team this time of year, and other questions. And Ed Golden joins us here momentarily from Right Angle Sports. We get a couple texts, we get a couple tweets. Chris Felica, the Bear from ESPN's College Game Day, he texted talking about adjusted win totals in the NBA. The Lakers' adjusted win total at DraftKings, 36.5, with the over juiced slightly at minus 125. They have 27 wins. So they got to win 10 of their last 22 to get over that. They have the second hardest remaining schedule in the NBA. Second hardest remaining schedule. Opponent win percentage, 547. Only the Bucks have a harder remaining schedule. You think they can go 10-12 the rest of the way? I'm not even sure if they can do that. They got a lot of hard games to come. 2 against Phoenix, 2 against the Warriors, 1 against the Jazz, 1 against the Sixers, 2 against the Nuggets, 2 against the Mavs. I don't know about that. Might go under on that. And then we get a tweet. We get tweets at Beating the Book. This is from, and this will lead into our next guest. This is from Sam Ginsberg. He said, Gil, Sam Ginsberg here. When you have Ed from Right Angle Sports on, tell him Sam G from Pittsburgh says hello. I was one of the first using his service way back in the mid-'90s. He has great integrity and accountability, always in capitals. Consider the message passed along. First time on the show. He doesn't do a lot of media. I'm thrilled to have him. He started his service in 1996, really blew up in 2010. Great having him on. It's Ed Golden, the founder of Right Angle Sports. How you doing, Ed?
Hey, Gil. Thanks for having me on.
Really appreciate you making the time. Let's just start with the general conversation because I've always, I have Bob on, Dr. Bob, who you know as well. I have him on frequently. We get into this from time to time, but I haven't had a chance to talk to you about this, which is just the notion of pick selling services in general, a justifiably poor reputation sort of, business, just generally speaking over the years. I think we can all agree on that. Have you found that for those who do have the integrity, like a Bob Stoll, like you, like Ed Golden, have you found that hard to sort of overcome perceptions through the years?
Yeah, definitely. I think, a lot of people kind of write you off right away if they hear that you sell picks. I feel like we've lost a lot of opportunities, through time, just because we're pick sellers. But I think it's unfair. I think when you're evaluating picks or evaluating a person, it shouldn't really matter if they sell picks or give picks free. I mean, there's a lot of people who give picks free who lose or lie about their records or whatever it is. So yeah, I think it's unfair.
I agree with you. I really the broad stroke of a brush is always a foolish thing. I think at any walk of life, including this one. You model. You are a predictive modeler, but you would say that Right Angle is different in that you're a little more subjective than a strict modeler through the years. Would you say?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we have a pretty large team, and we like to kind of specialize in conferences. Where each person will kind of specialize in 2 or 3 conferences, and I think that gives us an edge because we're just we have intimate knowledge of teams, and we can take that information and opinions and apply it to the models, and that kind of, I think, gives us an upper hand over everybody else.
So you've been, and I use the word reclusive. I don't mean to use a dramatic word word like that, Ed, but you have not been one to do a lot of media over time. Why now would you say that you're willing to sort of come out and promote yourself a little more? Is it because it's sort of the new day here with legalization?
Yeah, I mean that's a big part of it. We've never been able to really scale the business, and we've always been kind of limited by it being hard to get down on the picks. So, we've always had a limited number of customers. But now, with legalization, the pie has gotten bigger for everybody, and there's definitely more opportunity, I think, to grow our business.
Yeah, I've seen Preston, our buddy Preston Johnson. I've seen Adam Chernoff, among others, sort of do a live release of some of your plays. You didn't used to necessarily do that. You didn't do that. But explain to folks, if you would, because now for those who are like, okay, I don't know who Ed Golden is, Gil, tell me specifically about it. Well, Ed, you move, and anything I say here, if I'm wrong, please correct me. You move upon release of your plays in college basketball lines dramatically. Can you give a sort of general range of what's normal for you if you release a total or if you release a side? Total's obviously your biggest thing.
Yeah, it depends on the time of the year, but early season college basketball, we'll move sides about 2 points. Totals anywhere from 3 to 4 or 5 points. I can give you the two that we released today.
Please.
We did, we did VCU -3. I think it's sitting at 4.5 right now. And we did Oakland under 127, which is at 124 right now. So I'm actually kind of surprised in March. In March, that's actually a pretty big move.
It is a big move this late into a season. When did you first? Was I accurate that 2010 was around the time where you started to move it dramatically? Is that about the time period?
Yeah, that's a good estimate. Yeah, we started kind of getting involved in kind of some of the sharper forums, and people started, more of the sharp community started taking notice of us, and that's where we started to gain more and more influence.
What methods have you had to come up with? So, in other words, when someone like you who has that kind of market impact, if you were to just release a line, there's all kinds of technical considerations you have to make, whether you send it out via email, whether you do it on your own website, the methodology you use in terms of, do you just give it out? Do you warn subscribers that you're about to give it out? Can you explain to people what you do now and how you used to do it, sort of the evolution of that?
Yeah, so it's not a lot different than what someone, like a professional bettor, would have to deal with. I mean, first you have to overcome the winning part of it, and then you have to overcome the getting down part of it. And when I started, I would just send emails in the middle of the night, and it was no big deal. But as we grew, we had to start doing warnings and set release times, and then we kind of copied a Dr. Bob idea where he had a countdown timer for his release. We did that for a while, and it finally got to the point where I said, let's just make this kind of how we bet. When you work with movers or whatever to bet stuff, it's kind of coordinated. And people are like, well, you can't trust the customers; they're going to bet early. So we came up with this system where we have everyone set up a play. They get 40 seconds to do whatever they want, and then we say go or cancel. If it's a real play, it's a go. If it's not, we'd cancel, and that kind of keeps people away from front running us.
Interesting. So how much, are you literally, do you sometimes cancel 2, 3 at a time before you actually give the real one?
Yeah, occasionally. If we see lines are moving during the setups, we'll keep doing cancels, and we'll go, we'll do one side, we'll do the other side. Sometimes we'll do a fake side, and then we'll do a real side after. We just kind of keep it random, kind of keep people guessing.
Yeah, Bob has, having worked with Bob, and I'm glad you brought him up too, he's always had to, that's always been a hurdle for him and a challenge when releasing, and how to sort of, manufacture it in a way that is fair for all, if you will. All right, so let me ask this. Is there a time of year historically? Because I've had college basketball handicappers come on, Ed, who swear by the fact, it's the beginning of college basketball season. That's where they make their hay. It's right when college basketball season begins. The bookmakers aren't the lines aren't as sharp, and so that's where they really do their best. Then I've had others, right, who also say, well, it's actually the conference tournaments. There's like quirks to the conference tournaments, the quote-unquote new season or the perceived new season, right, that some of these bad teams have, where somehow it affects results. Is there a time of year, one of those two, maybe there's another time, where you have historically done better than at other times of year? Or can you not make a statement like that?
No, I think without any question we've done better at the beginning of the year. November, for sure. December, it's probably been the best time of year for us. And we kind of shape the service that way. We tend to kind of go on a hiatus, around mid-January, kind of take it easy in February, and then we kind of come back for March. I still think, November, December are the best, but we like March a lot more than, let's say February, because there are, it's kind of a reset for everyone, and, there's just, you're getting the best effort from all the teams, and, it lends to more predictability, I think.
I want to get some of your specific thoughts on these tournaments here coming up after the break, if you're willing to stay. But just one other question here, which is, how has the game changed, transfer portal wise, whatever sort of, the one and done era being the biggest sort of change in the game over recent times. Has that affected your results? Like, have you had to adjust the way you have done things based on just sort of the way the game has evolved?
Not really. I think the more change is kind of how the market's evolved. We went through some years there where I'm sure you remember we didn't even have total lines on all the totals.
Right.
We had TV totals for a couple of years, and now in the last couple of years we have lines on every extra game, which we didn't have before. We have lines going up, earlier than they ever had. The market's kind of maturing earlier than it ever has. So I think there's more competition in the market, but there's also a lot more favorable things with the earlier lines and more lines to bet totals in every game.
Ed, could you stick around? I want to continue after the break. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure, of course.
More with Ed Golden from Right Angle Sports to get into some of his thoughts on these tournaments coming up. Numbers Game, VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Kind enough to join us for another segment because I have other questions to ask. And yes, I know I'll try to get some actual thoughts on current basketball from Ed Golden at Right Angle Sports. Ed, I was just thinking here after the break, I'm like, I finally get a chance to talk to you on stuff. You sort of, I think you sort of hinted at this, but anyway, it triggered something in my brain anyway, which is changing market landscape. And also, if I can use, because Alan Boston, famous college basketball handicapper, who I'm sure you're familiar with, who's been on this show many times in the past, he talks about market manipulation. So college basketball lines, certainly, I guess, and you can corroborate, and you can tell me how this has changed. Back in the day, you might have been able to bet them later than you can now. Have you noticed that in recent years as being one of the big things that the markets have moved, say, overnight in a way that they didn't used to?
Yeah, I think definitely the market moves earlier. I think there's more opportunity to bet earlier for groups and pros. So that definitely happens. And the manipulation is another tricky one because you never really know what's real or what's fake. And it kind of makes it tough to kind of know if you're beating the closing line or not because back in the day, you'd have, a group would bet -3 and it would move to 4.5 and that'd be it. Now it's like they like -3, they fake it to 2, they bet they're -2 and they close at 2.5. So it's like they like -3 but they close at 2.5. So it kind of makes it hard on people who kind of use that, that metric.
Yeah, I was going to say, so the conclusion there is, at least in the sport of college basketball, let's confine it to that the notion of beating, the notion of having consistently good beating of CLV isn't really something that necessarily translates, right? It's not a metric you would hang your hat on.
I mean, it's not what it used to be. I mean, if you're, an aspiring, a beginning better or something, I think it's still something you want to use. And generally it's still, going to lead you in the right direction. It's just not as reliable as it used to be.
Couple other things here. When the market fades you, what is your reaction to that kind of thing?
That's a great question. It's not something you like. I think you got to try to figure out, if you can, who it is, or why it is. If you think you have some type of non-market information, then it might be a situation where you're going to, add to your bet, or you might just say, okay, I don't like that game that much. I'm going to stop where I am. I might even want to get off it if it's a game I, think someone knows more than me on. But it's like I said. I think there are times where I know why someone has been on the other side, and I might be okay with that, and I might increase my position.
There's let's go back. Your beginning was 1996. You first started by putting extensive sort of descriptions of why you were betting certain games, and you did it in forum sites. What is your current take on communities? And I guess specifically, Ed, if we're going to talk about this, we have to talk about Twitter. What is your take as a guy who is, not one to jump on media opportunities, but as you observe Twitter, gambling Twitter specifically, what is your general sort of thoughts when you see the day-to-day madness there?
Well, first of all, I'm really pro-community. I mean, without the communities, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. Networking, all that good stuff. I think everybody needs that. It kind of went away when Twitter, with the advent of Twitter. I'm on Twitter a lot. I think it's valuable. It's interesting. It's entertaining. But as far as like getting into like a deep community, it's not a great format. I don't know if we started our Slack about a year and a half ago. It's called bettingtalk.com, and it's a Slack community where there's a lot of pros in there. That a lot of good stuff gets exchanged, a lot of networking, and I think it's great for any beginning bettor to get involved in that type of community.
Talking to Ed Golden from Right Angle Sports. You can follow him on Twitter at RASPicks. And all the stuff that he does, you can, link from there. Or where would you tell people to go to? Right Angle Sports itself, or to your Twitter?
The Twitter has all the links. Yeah, it should be fine.
Okay. All right, Ed. They'd kill me if I didn't ask you for some specifics, because I could ask you general questions like that for an entire hour, and I'd be fascinated by it. But just generally speaking, as we head now into the small conference tournaments, do you do any futures, or do you bet those markets for tournaments in general? Obviously, I'll ask you the same about the big dance, or are you still just a game-by-game, daily basis kind of guy?
Yeah, we don't do much with futures. I know there's good opportunities out there, but it's just not something we really spend a lot of time on.
All right, and your two picks that you made today, even though the lines have moved, what were they again?
We did VCU -3, and we did Oakland under 127. Now, a lot of times those will come back closer to game time. So, like if you get a VCU -3.5, I think that'd be good. I think Oakland's probably good to, I'd say at least 126. I'd be good with it.
Let me ask you this question.
If those lines happen to come back.
In case those lines happen to come back, which sometimes they do. Bob used to say that all the time, too. Like, I might move them, but they might come back very often. And so those are the two picks that Ed put out today for Right Angle Sports. Maybe we can get you on at some point and actually do the release on this show. I'd be totally into that. Obviously, as we get to the later stages here of the college basketball season, we'll see if there's an opportunity. Let me ask you about, just generally speaking then, is there a team or teams, Ed, that you feel the market on a daily basis with game lines, just generally speaking, that you feel that the general market overrates or underrates?
Well, that's a good question. We're kind of building a whole list of teams that we want to kind of play on and play against in in the conference tournaments. I don't want to give too much away, but I think what we look for, just generally speaking, is one of the things we look for is just teams who really underperformed in the regular season. I know I heard you talking about Pepperdine on the show yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
A team like that. I mean, they have a lot of injuries. I'm not sure if I would use them, but teams that just really underperformed and then get that reset opportunity in the tournament. I think those are the kind of teams you want to look for.
Do you buy into the notion that in addition to the teams that underperformed, that there are some teams that won their regular season conferences that almost bear down even tighter during their conference tournaments because it's not enough to have won the regular season. They still have to get through their conference tournament, so they almost tighten up their lineups even more so? Have you noticed that as a thing through the years?
Yeah, I mean, that's something to look for. A team that is going to tighten the rotation and improve their rating a little bit. It's certainly one factor you can look for, sure.
Okay. Do you see in the years coming up, like how long do you think you can do this in perpetuity, Ed? Do you think that you can have an edge? I mean, nothing lasts forever, right? You have gone a long time beating college basketball and having a huge influence on the market. Do you ever worry that there's a time in the future where you're like, yeah, this could end if, this thing continues to happen? Like a transfer portal, will players get more dispersed and it becomes that much more in terms of parity? Like, do you ever worry about things like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, obviously, at some point, we're going to lose our edge. It's not going to last forever. I think, at least I hope that it'll be kind of a slow diminishing edge instead of just a period of 1 year. But who knows how it will end? I mean, it's hard to predict that, but obviously at some point it will. But I think I have a really good team. I'm getting pretty old, but I have some younger guys on the team who are really good, and I think as a team I feel pretty good about where we are right now.
Ed, we got to run because Lon Kruger's coming up, and we want to get his opinion on stuff, and we want to talk to him. But I just want to say in closing, because this is the first time you and I have had a chance to talk extensively. We've had some exchanges in the past, but honestly, I just want to say thank you not only for coming on today, but thank you for being a guy through the years that has been, just like the tweet said, and I'll just back that up, a guy who has been completely about integrity, completely about being above board and honest and working hard and doing this for all the right reasons, despite the horrible and justified, we both agree, and justified reputation of the pick-selling industry in general, how you have stood above the fray. And I just really appreciate that, and thank you for that, man.
Hey, thank you. It means a lot coming from you, and we're big fans of the show, and keep doing it.
Thank you, Ed. Appreciate it. Ed Golden from Right Angle Sports, everybody, at RAS Picks on Twitter. Check that out for sure. Coming back, Lon Kruger, one of only 3 coaches in the history of the NCAA tournament to take 5 different programs to the dance. We'll get his thoughts next. Numbers Game, VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.